Hi, and welcome to Probeline. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank the good folks at the Aspen Thrift Shop for sponsoring this show and for supporting GrassRoots Television. Their sponsorship helps make this happen. My name is Reid Haughy. I'm co-hosting with
Ann Mullins. Nice to be here.
And today we're interviewing Joe DiSalvo, who is hoping to be re-elected as the Pitkin County Sheriff. But first we want to take a minute and talk about voting, when and where you can vote, because it's important that you vote.
Okay, first of all, thank you for joining us. But all this is not worth much if people don't vote. So, vote. You can register to vote. If you're not registered, go to pitkinvotes.com. It's all very clear there how to register. You have to be 16, citizen of the U.S., and only have established residency in Colorado for 22 days. And you can vote on the Colorado ballot. You can register online or on your phone. The deadlines vary, but the latest registration is 7 p.m. on Election Day. Your ballot, again, you can see a sample ballot at pitkinvotes.com. The ballots have been sent out. October 24, early voting begins. November 8th, of course, is Election Day, 7 to 7. You can mail in your ballot, you can drop it off, or you can vote in person. And you can also track your vote, track your ballot through Pitkin Votes. Voting service, until the 6th, you can drop off your ballot at the Pitkin County Administration Building or the Sheriff's Office. Thank you. And after Election Day, then the Pitkin County Administration Building, Jewish Community Center, Snowmass Village Town Hall, and Basalt Regional Library. All the locations are ADA accessible, and they're open from 7 to 7. So please vote. Back to you,
Thanks,
Reid.
Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thanks, Reid. I do think voting is our most important right, and it really puzzles me how underutilized the vote is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think 1/3 of our country voted last election,
Right.
and I don't think we're exercising our right enough. So that's just my commentary on Ann's last commentary.
Well, I'd like to
Please vote
continue
more.
the commentary on your commentary.
I'll make a comment on that.
All right, from the Department of Commentaries. We had a conversation during the last election and on Probeline, and you mentioned a couple things, which I found very interesting. The jail came up twice in that interview, and part of it was that you were very proud of the programs in the jail, including yoga and mindfulness, and I'm curious whether that's still going on. Whether those programs still exist in the jail.
Oh, question mark? Okay, I thought there
sorry.
was another question. Well, right now, Reid, our jail's closed for the most part. We're not housing inmates. We've moved the majority of the people that stay here to the Garfield County Jail because of some facility issues that have been well publicized. I think the question goes more now to what do I want the jail to be like. And I think that those mindfulness programs that we instituted 4 years ago, or maybe more, 8, I don't remember when we started yoga.
Yeah.
I would guess it was at least 8 years ago. I really think that yoga, mindfulness, meditation, cardiovascular, that is, I think, some of the programs that we need in jail. Weights do not get put in the Pitkin County Jail. So I really want to increase those programs. I want to be able to have, and hopefully in 4 years from now, when we're sitting here again, I could tell you we have a mental health program in the jail where people could come and be segregated from true criminals that are predators.
Mm-hmm.
And these people with mental health can be segregated and get the help they need with clinicians and psychiatrists and psychologists. And then I hope...
Some people call that a mental hospital. Why aren't those folks in mental hospitals?
Well, first of all, our mental hospital is in Pueblo, and it's full to the brim. There's no room in hospitals. That's why I think jails have become our default mental hospital,
Right.
is what I think you're suggesting.
Yeah.
So, where I grew up, and probably where all of us grew up, we had state hospitals, and they were storehouses for people who were severely mentally ill and they were treated like subhumans. I mean, it was horrible the way these places were. So I think we eradicated those, and now we're looking for a new solution. Unfortunately, in the meantime, the default is jail, because inevitably these people will commit a crime or show up on somebody's radar and end up in jail. But you know what we're not doing? We're putting them in, and we're not treating them for the problems that they came to us with. Alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness. We have to find a way to treat those people in jail. And in 2020, we had a $207,000 jail-based behavioral program grant. That increased our ability to treat inmates in our facility from 12 hours a week with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to 40 hours a week. So I think through programs and creative solutions, we could come up with how to treat people when they're incarcerated with mental illness and addiction, hopefully, and life skills, hopefully send them out a little better and cut down on recidivism and get them to be a little healthier in their life is the goal.
How does it?
If I may.
Oh, sure.
I guess I'm supposed to know this, but this is the first time I've heard someone say the jail is closed.
Yeah,
and what causes that?
What happened was the jail was built in 1984, and it was really a source of pride for this community because it was progressive.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the building decays. It's a 24/7 facility. It's under a lot of stress every day. And we had some real issues, not only with the facility itself, but we had a violent attack on a deputy that I believe was a direct fault of the facility. We had an inmate commit suicide. Our jail needs a facelift of some kind, whether it is a replacement, whether it's a facelift, whether it's to be made safe. And as soon as my deputy got attacked and had a career-ending injury, I thought it's time to close. We can't do this anymore. And I was really afraid that that we as the county would be liable for anything that happened. We would almost be indifferent to that we were aware this problem existed, and we kept operating anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be deliberately indifferent. So we closed, and we moved our population to Garfield County, where they've been living now, and we help staff that facility. Unfortunately, we have to drive inmates back and forth for court dates and things like that. But I just couldn't, in good conscience, keep that jail open under those circumstances.
So there's nobody in the jail?
Well, there is. What we did was we did a $1.8 million facelift on it. So there's a small section of the jail, work release. I thought it was really important to keep work release open. Because if you're a guy who got a DUI and you've got to serve time, I don't want you to lose your job. I don't want your family not be able to make the mortgage. So work release was our focus. So we remodeled work release, and that's now up and running. We now have a couple of cells. We don't keep anyone for longer than 48 hours anymore. We try and get them to another facility as soon as possible. So it's been a while since we had full-time inmates in our jail.
I wanted to ask one more, which is that this incident with the deputy occurred not very long ago, but the jail's been there for 24 years, and physically it's the same place. What changed that made it?
Reid, I think what's changed is and I don't think there's a polite way to say this, but the inmate has changed significantly. We are seeing more people with mental health needs, and that could be violent and unpredictable, as this person was. The unpredictable part's the hardest to manage.
Right.
So the population's changing. We're also seeing people on longer stays than we ever have before. The jail system is designed to be, first of all, most people in there have not been convicted of anything. They're all pre-trial. Mm-hmm. So we have to remember there are sons and daughters that haven't been convicted of anything yet, and they should have the best treatment we could give them. What's really hip these days is what we call killing your number. If you know you're going to get a 5-year prison sentence, you want to do as much as that time in the Pitkin County Jail as possible. So what inmates do is they may wait for their trial, And a few weeks before the trial, they may ask for a new lawyer, which now extends another year or so, and that is now adding time that they won't have to spend in Department of Corrections. It's a complicated issue. It deserves a lot more time than we just gave it, but it's really adding a complexity. The mental illness part is adding an unbelievable complexity to incarceration.
Yeah.
So, a couple more questions about the jail. The detox center, recovery resources, does that help you out a bit? It was supposed to. Well,
It's not a secure facility, so people can leave.
Oh, okay.
So it's different than jail, but it is a good intermediate step.
Okay. The other thing, are you advocating for a new, bigger jail in a new location, or trying to rehabilitate the current building?
So, Ann, this is a political question that I've been batting around now for 6 months.
It's a hot issue, yeah.
It's a very hot issue, and I got to say it's fueled with a lot of misinformation. As a former council person yourself, you know that there needs to be a process. I can't just wave a wand and get
Right.
this ridiculous number of $35 to $40 million and build a 47-person jail. There needs to be a process.
Right.
We have hardly begun the process. So I don't know the number. I don't know the scale. I don't know the size. I don't know where it'll be. I don't know it'll be in the same location. We're working with 2 consultants. One consultant group is looking at the physical plant. After 45 years, how is this building really holding up? And then we're also looking at what services we could offer. So there's 2 consultants working on those tracks. And we're working with the commissioners to see what this community wants. It's going to be similar to the airport, hopefully smoother. But there will be a civilian process in this.
Okay.
That we will hear from the community. And that's what I'm trying to tell people who say, we're building a new jail and it's $35 million and 47 beds. Well, who has said that?
That's why we were asking these questions.
Yeah,
so
who
you
said
can-
that outside
Yeah.
It hasn't come from a commissioner. It hasn't come from a sheriff. It hasn't come from anyone.
Yeah.
So I think this process is just starting. I
Okay.
think after this election cycle, I hope that we really start to get some traction on it. But I know the commissioners and I are committed to a new, different jail. And when I say new, people think it means raising the old one and building a new one. What new means is different than what we have.
Okay.
If a facelift will do it, I'm all for it. If it means to be raised and reconstructed, I'm all for it. The point is, we just don't know.
Okay.
We're throwing darts at a board when people are throwing out numbers and size and need. It's subterfuge as far as I'm concerned.
Well, then other than the programming at the jail, what else the mental health issues are so important in this county. What else can the Sheriff's Department do to address those issues?
Well, I think the PAC program is really good.
Oh,
That's
okay.
a program where police officers go on calls with clinicians. So now you have a partner.
Maybe you could. What's the acronym for?
Macron is a police. And
I
you
should know
just-
it too.
you-
Yeah.
the both of- Police and
That's okay.
the
Sorry, I just saw it for people.
We call it co-responder
Okay,
program.
okay.
So what it's really done is when I was doing this job in a uniform and I went to a house where someone was in a mental health crisis, I was the only one who could deal with that with my police education, which is hardly anything to do with how to help somebody who's in a mental health crisis.
Okay.
And we would do the best we could. And sometimes our skills were bad and they were escalating, and unfortunately not here, but in other places it would lead to a shooting or violence because this person would become non-compliant because we just didn't know how to communicate with them.
Right.
So I think when we go with a co-responder, with a clinician, they have the skills to de-escalate this situation, talk to the person, they are professionals at it, and I really think it's a game changer for the way we treat the mentally ill and what options we could offer them that might not be jail.
Okay.
And you're doing that now.
That's already happening. The Aspen Police Department, the Pitkin County, almost every Up Valley agency, all the way to Basalt, has some kind of PAC program.
And the clinicians come from
The Hope Center, Mine Springs,
Yeah.
wherever we could get them.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I think it's
Reid,
been
you
in
got to
place.
get out more. This is two things that we've whiffed on.
Yeah, 3 or
Yeah.
4 years. It's a newer program.
Do you know
Yeah.
Cooper Street Pier closed?
I heard that.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That was 30 years ago.
Right. That would explain why my takeout order has to come. Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I'm pouting over here now.
I'll tell you about the PAC program
Okay.
later. So, Aspen is getting a new chief of police. If you go to, just as we were talking about earlier, if you go to their website, similar to that discussion, their mission or the way they want to police is it's very similar to what you have on your website for the sheriff's, the way the sheriff wants to police. What would you like to see in the new, first, how's the relationship with the police department, and what would you like to see in this new police chief? How best can the two
The first
departments
question's
work
a lot
together?
easier than the second question. First of
Okay.
all, I think Richard Pryor is the longest running chief of police the city of Aspen has ever had. And I think that's a real testament to somebody respectfully and who works for a board of 5 people. You know, you got to juggle 5 people's opinions and wants and needs, unlike the sheriff who, you know, is elected, but I have 18,000 bosses. I think Richard Pryor has been the best chief of police we've ever had. He and I have a great relationship with each other. Our styles might be slightly different. He's a little more low-key than I am when it comes to maybe a profile. I wish I had a lower profile sometimes. Richard, I think, is one of the most compassionate men that I've ever met in my life. He is an empath. He feels whatever is happening in his community. He takes it on, like I think we all have served. I mean, it's really interesting talking to a former county manager and a council person. You know what this responsibility feels like. And for a chief of police or a sheriff, it never stops. You know, you worried about the city all the time, Reid. I know you were, you know, passionate about being our county manager. And these jobs don't stop at 6 o'clock, and Richard's the same way. So I think, it's a loss. I'm jealous he's retiring. I'm happy he's moving. He's be living in Europe, Great Britain, and France.
Right.
And I'm so happy for Richard. I hope to visit him there someday. I hope we get a duplicate in the new chief of police. I don't know what the process is. I know right now that I believe they're looking for consultants or starting the process. But if I could clone Richard, I would have another one. I know we've had some success with previous chiefs of police that come from other jurisdictions, so I'm curious what that might look like. But I don't know. That's a City of Aspen issue that they're going to be dealing with now. But if they could duplicate Richard, I would love that.
What are the qualities that made that such a good relationship from him?
You mean between Richard and I?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we are such different people, and I think we're fascinated by each other. I'm fascinated by his quiet, calm, confidence, unflappable demeanor. I'm a little more flappable, I guess, maybe a little more vocal than I should be publicly. But I do think that Richard and I have a unique relationship that I cherish. We eat breakfast together. I'm going to miss him.
Yeah.
You know, he's the only chief I really know as sheriff. So it's going to be interesting for me as a sheriff how to deal with a new police chief, unless it comes from the ranks of the police department. And I think there are I think there are some quality people within the department that could do that job if they apply.
How do the police department and the sheriff's department cooperate now? You know, it's a long time since a squad room was shared.
That was Reid, and most people don't remember that, but for a long time, when I started my career in 1985 at the Aspen Police Department, we were under not only one roof, one room
Right.
was shared by the police and sheriff. So when we would say, anybody know Ann Mullins? Some guy from across the room might go, Maybe we should use somebody else. But
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
know
say
Ann
that-
Mullins. She lives on 123 Main Street. Now we're sharing information constantly.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
was organic.
yeah, it was organic, and life got in the way, growth got in the way, progress. So, but now we're separated by 8 feet, which is, they're in the building next door. We try to interact as much as we can. I don't think the relationship's ever been better. If they have a big case or a big incident, I hope I'm Richard's first call. When we have a big case or a big incident, Richard is my first call. I need help. And we help each other, and that's what we should do. But the same goes for Snowmass Village and Basalt. I mean, I've got 1,000 square miles, so we just can't limit my relationships to the police chief. I've got 2 fire districts. I've got a Snowmass chief and a Basalt chief. They're all in my jurisdiction. So, and an ambulance district. So it's a balancing act. But Richard's my closest peer.
Yeah.
So real quick, where was that office, and how many people? How many
It was
officers
in the basement
total?
of the courthouse.
Yeah.
So
was it?
in
Oh,
that
where
big
was?
room that's down there,
Oh,
that was
okay.
just a room full of desks.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
half the basement.
Yeah,
Okay,
and we
yeah,
all just
we're-
sat. You and a sheriff's deputy may share a desk with a police officer, and in fact, I did. But it was just one big room, and it was really good for public safety.
I'm sure. So how long were you with the police?
I got hired in 1985. I think my first year with Bob was 88. So I was there for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And
And then-
it was really, it's a great job. I just really knew Bob and the philosophy of the sheriff's office is where I wanted to go to. And it just felt like a good fit.
Yeah. So that next 34 years. then.
That was the next 34 years, 37 years in the same profession.
Yeah.
So is that philosophy still, you think, the same, relevant, changed?
You know, it was really cool, and Reid, it's hard for me to, I do my best not to talk too much about Bob, because I don't want anyone to think it's a tool, but he is a big part of my life,
Right.
and who I am. When he was alive, we still talked a lot, and we talked about the philosophy and how it would have to change in the era of a Columbine, in the era of school shootings and mass shootings and growth, our own growth, highway, influx of people, COVID, everything like this just changed. I think we need to be nimble, more nimble now than we were when we worked with Bob. It was pretty much peace, love, and understanding, and we all got along, live and let live.
Well, we were our own little world.
We
kind of
were in our own
ignored
little world. The
outside
world came to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can't just ignore the big problems that are happening all around us. So we had to adjust our philosophies for that. And Bob and I would spend hours talking about how we have, when either he was sheriff or retired, how do we change and adapt to this really screwed up environment that we seem to be living in, of violence, of hate, race, all the things that this community has grown to absolutely deplore. Immigration, I could go on, but we talked about flexibility, and I think that's what we have to be, is flexible and adapting without losing our core philosophy that people are people and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Second chances are prevalent, and I still believe in that at the core. It's how we treat people. These are our friends and family members. It's too small not to be impacted by people that we know when we're doing this job.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
How about a lighthearted question?
I thought that was the lighthearted question.
No, this is different. How are the Doing Time with the Sheriff podcasts going?
I actually love them. Thank you, Ann. And we do
There you
them.
go.
We do.
I love the title.
I
Doing Time.
we do. I do them as much as I can. We do them for almost every branch of the sheriff's office we can. I hope people are listening. I mean, I'm not paying attention to the clicks, but you know, and I think it's really cool that we have this little radio studio or podcast studio in our office.
Oh, I didn't
we
know.
do it right
in the
out of our
Oh,
office.
okay.
We bought the equipment, and so if I need to get a message out to you about a wildfire, for example, and I want to record it, we do it in our studio, which is somebody's office. Do all the mixing and stuff and shoot it out, and that's Alex Burchetta. So you know, we've animal control officers, school resource officers, myself, parents have a mechanism to go listen. And we thought it was the 21st century way to communicate with the public effectively at what we're doing.
Yeah, it's great. You've got three
You
so
want to
far,
come
right?
on as a guest?
Sure. what would I talk about? Anyway, I thought that was pretty innovative.
It's
and
fun,
fun.
and it is innovative. I hope more people do it.
Yeah. So,
Well, and you mentioned wildfire. You know,
Yeah.
I think about in your role as the sheriff to do these emergency services. You're like the guy. That's got to be evolving and more demanding, more complicated. And how is that going? How does the sheriff's department respond to that?
Well, you know what? Out of 64 sheriffs in this state, none of them could understand why in 1865 somebody gave wildfire to the sheriff. But we became the fire warden, probably by default. When a fire exceeds the limitations of the local fire district, it becomes a county fire. When it exceeds ours, a state, and then a federal fire. I think Lake Christine was a really hard time for this valley, but I think it really taught us a lot about fire behavior, and how people react. One of the things I really think, Reid, that will change the way we react to fire is notifications. When you looked at that Marshall fire, how quickly that moved and obliterated, I think, 1,000 homes. We're lucky no one got killed, but their alert system could have been better, and Sheriff Pelley is a friend and somebody I admire. But, you know, we've had that. We were the second in the state to have this iPause system that I'm so proud of. You know, when your phone goes off and you hear an Amber Alert and it's very loud and piercing, we now have that ability to ping every phone in Pitkin County, every cell phone, whether you're signed up or not. Says a fire is coming, a flood.
And whether your phone is from here or not.
That's right. Whether it's here or not, you're going to get an alert that says evacuate. So what I would say is mitigate your property, get dead brush, get stuff away from your house, try and fireproof your house the best you can. Listen, when we tell you to leave, please leave. It's probably the best thing you could do.
Yeah.
Have things like a go bag with your prescriptions and all the things that you might need to be out of your house for 4 or 5 days. Have a plan B for your dogs or large animals when this happens. So I think through our emergency manager, Valerie McDonald, I really feel comfortable that we're prepared. But when something that devastating happens, I don't know how anyone could be prepared. Boulder County is probably one of the most prepared counties in the state when it comes to emergencies, and look what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
are you working with the fire department, the Aspen Fire Department?
Yeah, we work.
Yeah.
They do a lot of the mitigation work within the district, and then you have the county that is and Valerie does a lot of the mitigation work countywide.
Okay, just so.
Yeah, the both fire departments or districts have a good, robust mitigation plan. It costs you money to mitigate your house, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
So, wildlife preparedness, emergency preparedness. Do you have thoughts? Again, on your website, it says that your sheriff's office is in charge of airport security. Do you have thoughts about the changes that are being proposed or contemplated for the airport? What would make your job easier or harder?
Don't trap me with an airport question, please.
Oh,
No,
well,
I'm kidding. No, but what we do is, whatever happens to the airport, will have little effect on the sheriff's office. We're going to supply and keep police officers out there and keep walkthroughs going no matter what the future of the airport looks like. We will be part of that.
Can you describe what your role is out there? I mean, you have the TSA, but how do you interface with?
Well, it's no, you know, at one point it was mandated by the federal government that there be a police officer in every airport. And we just weren't big enough to take that on, to have somebody out there full time. So we worked a deal with them, more or less. It said our response time to the airport would be less than 10 minutes at all times. And we do that. Every day. I mean, I wish I had the statistics with me, but I think every hour, a few times an hour, there's a police officer out there walking through. We don't have the responsibility that TSA has. They're responsible for airline safety and who gets on the plane and who shouldn't get on the plane. We are the law enforcement branch out there. So I don't think it's any different than our presence at Bump Ski area or at Little Nell or anywhere where there's a large group of people. We should be.
Okay.
What about this notion of, you know, people talk about we're going to get bigger planes. We don't want bigger planes. There's a problem with what if a big plane crashes? We're going to be overwhelmed. It seems like the sheriff might have a voice in that conversation.
Yeah. And Reid, I'm not going to get too far into that because I really don't know a lot about the plane and what kind of course I want a quiet, fuel-efficient aircraft to be landing in Aspen in the future. I hope that we can solve this problem somehow. As far as an incident with a disaster like that, I think we're really prepared. When we had that 16-person crash, that was just devastation. And we managed it and cleaned it up and kept moving within 24 hours. What makes me happiest is my relationship with 64 other sheriffs, which police chiefs don't seem to have. If there's that kind of disaster, I could pick up the phone and maybe get 100 or 200 deputies here in the course of 6 or 7 hours to really help us out. And sheriffs, the 64 of us, it really is a brotherhood that I never thought I'd be part of because the whole cop mentality is not who I am. But when I became board member for the County Sheriffs of Colorado, I learned what we talked about before we started filming, that each one of these men may have different political or philosophical views, but they know what the people in their community want and they serve them. We also know that when we need each other, we go. This is the brotherhood, and I respond to other jurisdictions all the time. Sheriff Valerio is very, very helpful to me. Sheriff Van Beek in Eagle County, we have really good relationships, strong relationships. I don't know who the next Lake County Sheriff is going to be. That's a weird, contentious race over there. But, you know, example, when a president comes to visit, sitting president comes to visit, we probably need 200 cops. I call Sheriff Smith in Larimer County and I said, I need horses, I need cops, I need this. He sends them. And it's just out of the respect that we have for each other.
That kind of cues into a question I had because, again, going back 4 years, one of the things you mentioned was wanting to develop statewide relationships that, because we were coming out of that era where we didn't really believe we were part of the state. And we're pretty isolated.
And that bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
And I talked to Bob about it a lot when we worked with each other. And without going into details, he chose to be the Pitkin County Sheriff, and we can do it this way.
Right.
I thought it was important to know my neighbors and to start getting relationship with my neighbors. You know, a lot of my employees live in other counties, and I think it's important for me to create those relationships. So I thought the best way to do it was to run for a board seat.
Yeah.
And to my own surprise, you know, the majority of sheriffs in Colorado don't think like me. And to my own surprise, I was elected by these men and women, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. And it made me really believe that And I think this should be an apolitical position. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I am an independent. my opponent is a Democrat, and I see that coming with baggage, and I saw that happening with other sheriffs. So if we are truly right down the middle as law enforcement people, I don't want to have a party affiliation. I think all sheriffs should be independent, and I think the other 64 sheriffs, majority are Republicans. But we get along incredibly, and I'm proud of those relationships that I made just by taking this board seat that I occupied for 3 or 4 years. And I think it really did some amazing things for us here in Pitkin County that we just didn't have when Bob was doing this. And he was proud of that we opened the door and said, in fact, Reid, maybe the first or second time we spoke, we had the first ever County Sheriffs of Colorado conference right here in Pitkin County. These men and women came here not knowing what to expect, and they said, "You're just like us, but that hamburger's $35." You know?
What year was that?
I think we had it, Reid, in 2015, maybe.
Oh,
was the first
so
one
not
here.
that long ago.
Not that long ago, but I wanted to invite these people here because they had a preconceived notion of us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And when they got here, they realized we were no different, except the food cost twice as much.
So here's a more targeted question. Talk a little bit about the Rudi boat control. Why are you doing that? How's it going?
Yeah, thanks, Ann, because you know we as residents become blinded by that Pitkin County is just Aspen, Highway 82, and that's it. It's 1,000 square miles is what Pitkin County is, almost the size of Rhode Island. So people recreate at Rudi, people live at Rudi. Thomasville, Meredith is a community just like Basalt and Aspen is, and I think they should have the same services that anyone else has. We have had some real tragedies at the lake that we've had to respond to. So I had a deputy come to me and say, you know, why aren't we up there more often on the water? There's no cell service.
Right.
You know, there's so many things that could go wrong. And just, I really like to get ideas from the bottom up, and the zanier sometimes the better. When he came to me with this idea, I had the same reaction. And then I started looking at the statistics and the presentation that they gave us. Just the mere fact that we might be able to be patrolling on a boat and say, you need a PDF, a personal PFD, a personal flotation device. You need a PFD on.
Yeah.
We were up there a couple of weeks ago, and one of my deputies said, I couldn't believe there was a guy on a paddleboard, fully clothed, long pants, shoes, with no personal flotation device on. So the boat comes up to him and says, you know, it's an educational process. They deserve the same education and the same safety that anyone else in Pitkin County has. I think it's become real beneficial. The drinking and boating is, you know, those two seem to go hand in hand. And I think, you know, I'd like to try and make an impact on that. I think we really are, you know, why should we rule out parts of this county just because it's so rural? They deserve the same service as the people in the Highway 82 corridor get.
Right. So how many deputies are up there?
I would say, well, each boat, the boat is only one boat, and it always has to have 2 people on it.
Yeah.
So you know, we're trying to go up seasonally, obviously. But so 4th of July, you may see somebody up there for 3 days, and then the next week we won't have anybody up there at all. But we try
so
and
it's
have
not
somebody
daily.
every
Okay.
weekend
Okay.
during the high seasons. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's going to be a successful program. It's about being seen and being available. It's the same. We have another one called the Rural Area Deputy. This guy just patrols rural Pitkin County. I mean, I'm talking middle of nowhere. But his main task was, we had a fire that started in the frying pan 2 years ago, and we were wondering where we're going to move. We're locked in up there. Where are we going to move all these animals and people? So we're looking for large meadows. So this deputy said, I want to go out there and find these places. We'll target them. We'll drop pins on them. And if there's a 1/4 mile square meadow, let's use that to put firefighters and horses or maybe people. So he's out there in rural parts of Pitkin County that maybe no one set foot in 30 or 40 years. And he has run into people with sprained ankle, out of water. So I just want to be able to help everybody we can who use Pitkin County, whether it's for home or recreation.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I was going to ask how you manage 1,000 square miles with.
A lot of it is uninhabitable, so that helps.
Well, that's a good point.
Or inhabitable.
So how many deputies do you have, and are you fully staffed, or are you like a lot of other places in town that's
Okay, so we have
constantly
about
looking for people?
70 deputies, and that goes over 5 divisions. So we have the patrol division, the jail division, the communications division, which is basically 911 dispatch, civil division, which serves civil papers, and our administrative and emergency management, which is Valerie. So those 5 statutory responsibilities fall under the sheriff. The commissioners give me a healthy staff of 70 people to manage that. And right now we're short about 10 people over those 5 divisions. And we think we'll be hiring 5 people in the next 30 days or so. Being down 5 people in a post-COVID era, in a place where it's hard to find a place to live, I feel like we're doing okay.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I wish we could do better, but we're in good shape.
You know, and you'd mentioned again at the last time we talked was
Rita and I only see each other every 4 years.
every 4
By the
years.
way,
We used to see each other every day, but now we see.
we used to see each other every day.
And when
Now
you
it's a
go
lot
to
less.
Cooper Street.
But
Cooper Street.
you mentioned about how you're fortunate to have all these really bright people that work for you, and we're very complimentary of the staff, which I'm sure is well deserved. Is it a problem filling positions now, and have you thought about or wondered about housing?
I do worry about housing. I think it is a community-wide problem. It's not just the sheriff's office. I don't have the answers. I think the county right now, Reid, is incredibly innovative with the programs they're doing for retention and retainment of employees. One of the programs we have is if Ann wants to buy a $500,000 home, she can't afford it. The county will be a partner with you and say, we'll buy half of it, and then you just have to finance the other half. So that makes your $1 million home now a $500,000 home for an employee, which would make it easier to get a loan, and you own your home, and you could stay working there as long as you're living, in the house. Then when you sell it, county gets 50% of the money, and you get the other 50%. That is an innovative way for people to buy RO housing without going through APSHA or lotteries and all that stuff, which I still think is awesome. But I mean, housing, cost of living, those are big problems that probably bigger than this country sheriff could deal with by himself.
But you've still been able to fill positions.
Yeah, and like I said, that's through creativity. It really is. I mean, I've got people coming from rifle to this job. So, there is a real danger that they may not want to commute to 3 hours every day, and when a job in Glenwood opens, they'll take it. And that's what, somebody asked me a few months ago, one of our very wealthy people that moved here during COVID, what do you think is going to be the end of Aspen? I think when we shut the spigot off for employees, when we can't get people here to make beds, be a cop, serve a meal, work behind the camera, do all that stuff, I think we are shutting off the workforce faucet. Slowly, but I think eventually it will dry up, and then what? So I'm curious about housing like the lumberyard and things like that, how that progresses. In the next 4 or 5 years, maybe we'll have an answer.
Right. Would you ever consider doing something like the fire department's done, and there's 17 units that they build out?
Yeah, and I'm so glad I'm talking to both of you who knows government. That's probably a tax issue. And even if we get 17 homes, I have 70 employees. We're putting a small dent in it. But I would love to go to the voters sometime for a public safety tax that would include housing, sustain me for a long time. We'll never have to worry about things like tax-based
Right.
or sales tax based or property values. I would really like that. It's a dream. I'm not running on that, but it's just a dream I have. I worry about housing and employees in Aspen in the next 10 to 20 years. But I think we've probably been worried about it since we were kids here, Ann. I think it's
Yeah.
been a problem that we just lived with
Well,
it.
I was thinking it was always tough to find housing, but you could find it in town. The difference now is you can't, it might be terrible housing, but at least it was in town.
What
And
happened to
now-
all those carriage houses that we had friends who were renting in it?
Yeah.
I'm so lucky that I rent from somebody who has 2 homes and they're willing to rent their second home to an employee. I don't know how we get people with carriage houses or second or third homes here to turn those into employee housing
Right,
units.
and that is a city issue.
How do you do that?
Yeah,
Those carriage houses were cool.
they were.
At $400
And the
a
old
month.
barns.
$400 a month.
We only have about a minute left, and I want to make sure that we've covered everything you wanted to talk about, or if you have anything you want to mention, or...
I'm your guest, Reid. I think I'm happy to be here and answer another question if we have time.
One of the things we haven't talked about at all is climate and climate action. How can the sheriff's department become more efficient?
This is a great
Smart-
question. And
smart- smaller footprint.
yeah, I know that Greg Postman is a commissioner who this is quite an initiative for him, is EVs and things like that. Right now, I would love to have an all-EV fleet. Sometimes my cars are out there for 12 hours at a time running in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure it's practical yet to have an EV fleet in a rural police agency like this. I think the Aspen Police Department is doing a killer job with it. Our building, I wish we could have done a little better job with our lead. We're not
interesting.
quite the lead
Yeah.
we want to be, but you get to buy your lead status by as much money as you want to spend on your building. But electric vehicles, I think, is the future. We'll see how that goes. Right now, I don't think they're practical for a rural sheriff's office.
Right. That makes sense. Well,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for taking the time. I know it's been a busy day, and
Yeah.
we really appreciate it. And that means we're done.
Where's
Thank
the
you
guy?
very
The guy
much.
didn't ever come in.
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Oh, you did.
Okay. How'd it go?
Well, we're not off yet.
Oh, we're
So
not?
I-
Oh, I thought we were
I
done.
wanna say This concludes
Okay.
another episode of Probeline. Thank you
Yeah.
again to the folks at the Aspen Thrift Shop, and we're done. Thank you, Joey.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.